Help me, my brother, can you lend me a hand as I walk through this land of confusion? If we give to each other, then there's nothing to take. Let's live life for the moment before it slips away.
Hey, Jillian.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Oh, pretty well, pretty well.
So, hey, it's Memorial Day. Long
It
weekend.
is. Yeah, Monday. I like it. I like 4-day weekends. You know, it doesn't seem as much like a holiday though because we're stuck at home all the time, right?
Hold on a second. I like 4-day weekends. What other day is involved?
Yes. I took Friday off and Thursday off and Monday off and Sunday off and Saturday off. I never work. That's what happens.
You can't even do math because that's 5 days.
Yeah, well, one of those days doesn't count.
I don't even know. After learning that Living in La Vida Loca, the La Vida Loca is your favorite song, I just don't even know what to do with it anymore.
I'm pretty confident I never said that was my favorite song.
No, I'm pretty sure you did because recently you made a post on Last Life Ever that your favorite bands came out between May 99 and July 99, and the biggest song in that time period was Living La Vida Loca.
No, what I actually said was that I'm sure, given enough time, I could find a dozen or so bands that came out during that time that were better than the Beatles. And that was just because I know that at most bands that came out at any time were better than the Beatles.
What? Oh my God! You did not just say that. I don't think you better be quiet because if Derek hears you, my husband Derek hears you, I think life will.
Listen, here's the thing. I'm not afraid of Derek because he's 3,000 miles away from me right now.
Okay, that's a good reason not to be afraid of him. I'm not saying from a physical point of view. I think he might tell us we can't be friends anymore.
Oh, that's probably reasonable. You know, I'm being a little facetious because I like to be extreme on these polls, but the Beatles are definitely not my favorite band. So the idea that that's the best band of all time, I would say, let's wait and see what the poll says.
You know, all right, we'll do this poll of yours. I think it's ridiculous. I think you have to take the Beatles out because they clearly, there's no one who has a greater catalog of songs.
Well, listen, the greatest songwriting duo of all time is what you always say during your speeches, right?
What?
That's what you said during a speech once, that they were the greatest songwriting duo of all time, right?
They really were. Yes. No, that is right. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's right. That doesn't include, some of the really, truly great ones like Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Okay. It's not even the same category.
Well, yeah, we're talking about the greatest songwriting duo of all time.
No, it's not.
Siegfried and Roy probably had better songs.
People don't go around singing Rodgers and Hammerstein songs. They go around singing.
Oh, I do. I do all the time. Telling the truth is dangerous business.
Okay. Well,
honest and popular don't go hand in hand. I'm just saying. So happy Memorial Day, Jillian.
Happy Memorial Day. Did you do anything fun?
Well, I filmed a future episode in the past of The Last Life Ever.
That is true. I remember that.
That was pretty fun. And the other thing I did that was fun is I went over to my friend Brian's house and he smoked some ribs and we had some bourbon and some cigars. It was nice.
Nice. That is fun. That is a good time. I'm not much into ribs, as you know. So.
Well, he also smoked a chicken, so maybe you would have been okay with that.
I don't know. Like ever since I stopped eating fowl, I have no like. It just sounds gross to me, which is unfortunate.
You really missed an opportunity to say that it sounded foul to you.
It sounded foul. It sounds foul to me. But I'll tell you this: I still crave beef, which is weird.
Because it's delicious. It's not weird. Beef is one of the best meats. If you had to rank all of the meats on a hierarchy of 1 to beef would be the best.
Yes, I would have to agree. Yes, I'll go with that. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument for ahi tuna also.
Well, you know what's funny? I was gonna say I prefer ahi because I love sushi, but I didn't want to argue. We're talking about meats, and I thought maybe we meant land.
Oh yeah, I'm not Catholic, so I recognize that fish is still meat. Like I've got that figured out. It turns out it's still an animal and it has a face. My general rule is if it has a face, it's a meat.
Well, no, it's a living animal, right? So.
Right,
Yeah.
if it has a face.
Right.
Right. So like jack-o'-lanterns, like when you carve the pumpkin meat out of there, that's a meat. But most of the time it's a vegetable.
Okay. We're going to leave this conversation.
Yeah, we should really move on. This is really silly. And we have a really serious thing to talk about today.
Well, I don't know how serious. I mean, it is a very serious thing, but right. But the thing is, what we're really talking about is how to move on from serious things, how to make the best of your life. So before we do that, before we bring on our guest, let's do our jokes, our terrible jokes, and get them out of the way because the audience just loves them so much.
Oh yeah, no, they definitely. It's the only reason they tune in. It's not because of the amazing guests that we have or our winning personality. It's because they want to see if we can come up with a worse joke than last week. And I think I've done it this time. I think I have the worst possible joke.
Okay, I doubt it. I think I have it, but go on.
I'm going to let you go first. Ladies first.
What's better than, you're going to finish my joke on me. I can feel it. What's better than Ted Danson?
Oh, I don't know, but that just made me think of a better joke. But anyway, go ahead.
Ted Danson and singing.
Oh, wow.
See, I told you.
Yeah. That joke is so bad, I'm not sure I understand the punchline. Like, I might need you to explain it to me. What am I missing? Why is it funny?
Ted Danson. It's a play on words. Danson and singing.
Yeah, don't get it.
Well, I'm not sure if I even should have just done that, but all right. Okay, Jeffrey.
Okay, listen. So I thought that I would come up with a joke about war, and it turns out war's not very funny, so it's hard to find a good joke. But there is one thing I do know about war, and that is it doesn't decide who's right. It just finds out who's left.
Oh my God, that's the worst joke.
It's ever. Real bad, yeah.
You win.
It's terrible. It's also insensitive and horrible, but there is an argument for that. Like, war is kind of not great. We should try to avoid it.
Okay, so I'm going to bring on our guest now because I want him to talk about how he's gotten through wars. And welcome our guest, Mike Pearson. Hi, Mike. Thanks so much for joining. Before I introduce you, I want to read the reason why you're on here today. Mike and I have known each other for a couple of years, and his son Brandon Pearson was a Marine and was involved in one of the worst battles in the Afghan war. And I've been so inspired by Mike and his resilience through that terrible time in his life. But I want to read you all a Facebook post that he wrote on the anniversary of Brandon's death. Today, our family continued our tradition of meeting for breakfast and then going to Fort Logan I'm not going to get through this, to visit Brandon's grave. As we drove up, a young couple was already at his grave. As I walked up to them, I realized it was Spencer Elrod and his wife. Oh my God, I'm not going to get through this. Spencer is very special in our lives for a number of reasons. Not only was he Brandon's buddy in high school, and after graduation, he was also the Marine who escorted Brandon back to Colorado after he was killed. The story of Spencer escorting Brandon back to Colorado is, in and of itself, surreal. We were at Dover Air Force Base, and we were at the visitor center waiting for the shuttle that would take us to where Brandon's flag-draped casket came off the plane. I was visiting with the Marine chaplain and telling him the story of how Brandon and his buddies all hung out at my house and how they were a little on the wild side. I went on to tell him of Brandon going to boot camp, a cocky young man, and truly coming back a more mature, purposed man. Brandon's transformation was so profound that his buddy Spencer also decided to enlist in the Marines. The chaplain then asked me, "Would you like Spencer to be the escort that brings Brandon back to Colorado? Can you make that happen?" I asked incredulously. He said he couldn't guarantee it, but would try. Spencer was serving at a Marine base in Hawaii at the time, but through persistence and a miracle, the chaplain was able to contact the right people and convince them to get Spencer to Dover as soon as possible. After Spencer got word of his assignment, he was leaving his complex to make the long trek, and he saw a license plate in the parking lot where he lived that said, "Wait and for you, waiting for you." To both Spencer and I, that was a clear sign that Brandon was there and was waiting for his buddy to bring him home. I still get warm chills, if that's a thing, when I think of it. I tried to find the pic on my computer, but couldn't. I feel blessed to have seen Spencer today and to be surrounded by so many amazing people. Thanks to you all who have read my posts, reached out, or simply paused for a moment to remember Brandon, and so many others who have given everything for our country. The positive energy and power behind that cannot be expressed in words. Although I'm not 100% sure what my full purpose on this earth is in this lifetime, I know I'm not done. I will continue to pay it forward when possible, respect and honor those who serve, and try to make a positive difference to those around me. Brandon and his brothers all did that, and that is the best way to serve their memory. Life is crazy with its highs and lows. We all get them in varying degrees. The true test is what you do with them when they happen. James Finney, one of Brandon's 3-5 buddies, said it best in a recent post: "Control what you can, smile at what you can't." Then I would like to give you an opportunity. Oh, sorry, I kept reading. Control what you can and smile at what you can't. Thank you, Mike, so much for joining us. Please tell us about Brandon and what kind of man he was.
Certainly. So when Brandon was killed, he was 21, so he was very young. I've got a lot of stories. Some of them, it's interesting when they occurred at the time. They weren't necessarily so funny or so humorous at the time, but in hindsight, they're the real Brandon you remember. And one of the things that he had a couple sayings that he liked to say all the time. One of them was, "Seemed like a good idea at the time." And you can imagine the stories that go behind that one, where, he, a whole variety of it. I'll touch on a couple of them here in a minute, but seemed like a good idea at the time. And then when he was always stalling, especially when he was in trouble, he'd be like, "Well, what do you mean, Dad?" Because I'd ask him, "Well, how'd the truck get all beat up in front?" "Well, what do you mean, Dad?" And of course, a shopping cart came across and hit a 3/4 ton Dodge and dented the front. It's weird. Those shopping carts are brutal. And, the real stories never did 100% surface across the board. And he thought he was being very clever. But just like most kids in high school, a little rebellious, always thinking that he was doing the one-up on Mom and Dad. And, I thought, I'm sure, the same thing when I was growing up, and Mom and Dad didn't know anymore. And it's really not that case. It's parents are a lot smarter than give them credit for. And but he was always very, very loyal, even as growing up as a young boy. His younger sister, Ashley, they're 2 years apart. He's very protective of her, and very much wanted to make sure he was the peacekeeper within everything going on, and wanted to make sure everybody was all right. And even one time when he was in high school and and I were out buddying around and we were late getting home for dinner, he told me, he says, "Don't worry, Dad, I got your back." And so again, very cool, very simple things in some cases, but he carried that forward with his buddies as well. When I was over Labor Day, actually, right before he deployed, I went out to California, Kelly and I did. And we were sitting there having a meal, and he was rubbing his shoulder. I asked him what was going on. And he says, well, I heard it when we were doing training in the high desert. And I said, well, did you go get it looked at? He said, no, because if I do, and they find something, they're not going to let me go. And I'm not going to let my buddies go without me. So good testament to the kind of guy.
Oh, wow. So when did he make the decision to enter the Marines? Was it right out of high school?
Yeah. So we were actually doing college tours, because that was the plan that I thought we were on, was he was going to go to college. And we were literally on a college campus tour. And he turned to me and he said, Dad, he says, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I don't think college is really the place for me. I said, well, what do you want to do? And he says, well, I've been thinking about going into the military. So of course I asked what branch. He said the Marines, and my heart dropped. And I said, so why the Marines? And he said, well, those are the guys who get things done. And so you have to admire that. You have to back them up. And, I did, and I totally did. And he was truly, think about the timing of when he signed up. This is after 9/11. He knows what's happening. There's all kinds of terrorist attacks across the world. And he knows what he's getting into. He's not going to go on, some 4-year easy tour. This is real stuff happening out there. And so, but he signed up, and pretty amazing. Now
you have behind you, obviously that's a picture of him. What can you describe some of the other things that are behind you about Brandon?
Absolutely. So the picture is actually when they finish boot camp, they get a picture taken with a flag, and that was the official picture of when he graduated boot camp. The rifle behind me, this is actually it's called a field cross. So it's boots, his rifle, that's a real rifle, by the way, and it's his helmet. It's really his helmet. And those are his boots. And his dog are hanging here.
Oh, wow.
And this was actually, there's pictures on the front of it as well.
Wow.
This is what they presented, the Marine Corps presented when his battalion came back from the tour in April. They left in September. Brandon was killed in November 4th. And the rest of his battalion came back in April. They lost 25 guys during this deployment, which was brutal. Unfortunately, it was the most losses in a single deployment in the Afghan war. They had over 200 casualties, and just pretty brutal. If you've seen any of my other posts, you've seen all of the field crosses like this one here lined up, and it's pretty surreal seeing 25 of them in a row and realizing that each one of those is somebody's son, somebody's husband, somebody's brother. And so that's, again, pretty surreal. The Marines, they do a very good job of taking care of families, taking care of their brothers. Unfortunately, they've had a lot of practice doing that because of so many casualties over the years. But again, they've done a very, very good job with it. Some of the other letters are just in honor from different ranking ones from the president, just honoring Brandon.
That's awesome. So you have a funny story I read about a surfboard. Tell us about that. And do you still have the surfboard?
I do still have the surfboard. So after I graduated CU Boulder, I went to San Diego right out of college and took up surfing there. And after that, with the same job, I was in San Diego 5 years, Virginia 2, and then St. Louis for 3. Well, I kept the surfboard when we left San Diego, thinking, okay, sometime I'm going to get back to the beach, and I'm keeping this board. And so I carried it with us. We ended up in St. Louis, and not a lot of beaches there, but it was in storage in the garage. And at the time, Brandon was 5, and his buddy across the street was Ted. He was 7. And Ted had a great hill behind his house for sledding. And so one winter, the boys had already exhausted all their ideas for sledding with, tops of garbage cans and plastic bags and all those things. And of course, Brandon always, again, seemed like a good idea at the time. This is his boat. He said, hey, I've got an idea. Let's go grab the surfboard. This would make a great sled. And so, of course, I found out all of this after the fact. I'm at work. And so he and Ted get this surfboard. They drag it across the street. I can tell they drug it across the street by looking at the bottom of the board. And they end up sledding down the hill and having a grand old time. Well, I find out about it later. Obviously, I'm not too happy. And I still kept the board thinking, okay, I'm going to repair it. It's whatever. This is fine. It's one of those things. And then after I lost Brandon, I thought, well, I'm keeping this. I'm never getting rid of it. And so it actually hangs over the bar in the basement now. And truly, I will never get rid of it.
That is so great. So he sounds like a man, a young, mischievous boy who really matured really fast in the Marines, but was always just one of these kids who took care of everybody around him.
He did. And I was divorced and separated originally a couple of years, then divorced, and both kids moved in with me. And my house was the hangout place. And so everybody, all of Brandon's buddies would hang out there. And it was awesome because, some of his buddies would be looking at Ashley and he'd be like, absolutely no. Absolutely no. I will take you out.
Any fun.
And so that was pretty awesome with him being that protective. But, they were a little on the wild side. After Brandon went to boot camp and he came back, and he was truly, truly, truly a changed man. And that's why Spencer, the one who ended up escorting him back, that's why he joined, because he was like, wow, that's pretty transformational. And so, yeah, so it was a pretty cool deal.
That's excellent. Well, Mike, obviously you've had this, but you've had to move on with life. So I know, and I want to get to what you're doing with Darkhorse Angels, the foundation you've created, but how long did it take you till you made that decision that I've got to move on? I've got to live a life that's one of a fulfilling, best life ever.
So it's, in grieving, everybody does it differently, and everybody, it never gets easier, by the way, ever. And so I went through the anger, severe anger. I wanted to go join. I wanted to go turn Afghanistan into a sheet of glass. I wanted to do all those things. And then I realized, okay, I'm an old guy. And so I have to be more I have to be more productive in how I do this and how I approach this. So once I got past literally the anger phase, as they call it, I started thinking about what can I do differently. Not only that, I went to an abundant living retreat put on by Eric Plantenberg. And one of the things, the takeaways, he had a lot of things that he taught there that were really, really good and helped you get through things like this. But one of the things that really, really helped me a lot was, given any situation that you're in, find 3 positive things. They don't have to be things that justify it happening or things that make it okay, but just 3 positive things, period. And so I look back on this experience. So that was in 2012. So that was a couple of years after Brandon was killed. He was killed November 4th, 2010. Meanwhile, I got divorced in 2008, lost Brandon in 2010. Divorce round 2 was in 2012. Another story, entire new podcast for that one. But again, going through a hard time with everything and trying to figure out how I can make something positive out of this. And by finding 3 positive things, I went back and I looked at one of the exercises was to take one of the most painful moments in your life and find 3 positive things. And so I looked at that moment and I thought, wow, if I can find 3 here, then maybe there is hope for this whole process. And one of the positive things that I found was the awareness of military and just people that I was associated with, people that knew Brandon, people that knew our family, the awareness that they had for just the military and what they're going through was huge. So positive thing number 1. Second thing was I had a lot of families, a lot of parents reach out to me and say, wow, because of my posts or because of whatever, thank you for doing that, because I used to get so frustrated with my kids. I was so angry with the situation. And so I had them tell me that they're more in the moment, living in the moment, more appreciative of those, even the bad times. And then the last thing is truly not taking moments for granted. Any.
Jeff, you have to ask questions now.
Yeah. Listen, so that's really extraordinary, actually, because I'm thinking about some of the difficult times that I've had in life. And I mean, look, we don't know each other, Mike, but I try to be a pretty positive person most of the time. And I'm always looking for positive in everything that happens to me. And I'm always telling people they need to, but I've never really thought about looking back at something that I'm already through and thinking about what good came from that. And that's a powerful technique. And this isn't really a question, it's more editorializing, but I mean, it's really extraordinary. And to be able to do that with something so tragic, because I can't even, I don't have children, right? So I can't even begin to relate. When we had to put our dog down, I wept for weeks, right? And this is my dog, right? So I just can't even imagine what you were going through at that time. And then to be able to look back at it and kind of accept where you are and recognize that you have to, move forward. It's really extraordinary. I'm sure it wasn't easy though, right? So after you went to this retreat, then what sort of happened next? You found these 3 things. I'm sure that didn't magically make everything better. So what'd you do next?
Well, I've always been one of those. Again, there's all the cliches of get knocked down 7, get up 8, and that's always been me. I'll come up swinging every single time, but I wanted to be productive with just swinging instead of wildly angry swinging. And so I started getting into focusing on what I could do and what I was good at. And I had started getting into real estate investing in 2008 when I got divorced, because both kids moved in with me. I took all the debt. I'm like, oh crap, I got to figure out how to make all these ends meet. And so I started doing that. I had some success with that. I started looking at how I could help people advance in their lives and do better in their lives as well, financially. And so I've got over 30 companies, literally, with various partners that I've partnered with, and done a lot with that to help, again, pay it forward in some way, shape, or form. Most recently, I've actually started a foundation called Darkhorse Angels Foundation. By the way, Darkhorse, so the meaning behind that, my shirt says that as well. So his battalion, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, is called the Darkhorse, and that's their moniker. And so Darkhorse Angels is in honor of the 3-5-25 that were lost. They're the angels. And so I have one of my investment companies is called Darkhorse Angels as well. And that was really the theme behind that. I've also got one called Brandon's Angel Investments, which I'm partnered with his sister, my daughter.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's so great that you have that kind of relationship where you're you know, she's an adult now and you're in business together. That's
yeah, and it's very, very cool. And with Darkhorse Angels Foundation, I want to be able to pay it forward. There's a group out in the Midwest, or actually Tennessee, I think is where they're officially is, Darkhorse Lodge. You can find them at darkhorselodge.org. But they have some land. They're building cabins, 5 cabins, 5 rooms in each cabin, one named after each of the men that were lost. And so that idea, I want to carry that forward. That's one of the plans for the future. I have some property already in the mountains, so that's earmarked for that. That's going to happen. I also want to be able to create a park, much like the Zach Parrish Park that's in Castle Rock, in honor of the officer that was killed. And because, again, it's something that you see the families that are there. You see the families that go and enjoy that. And that's huge. That's what it's all about. So that foundation is a work in progress. It's still coming along, but that's most of the donations through that now are going to finish Darkhorse Lodge. But once that is complete, then we'll be moving on to the other things. And again, it's finding positive ways to pay it back and pay it forward. And even with some of the posts that I'm doing and some of the, you know, people like with the COVID-19 things, and people are struggling, they're having a tough time with it. And find 3 positive things, truly. And I've actually had that conversation with, I don't know how many people, about find those things. It's amazing the power behind that.
I'm gonna do that. I was just thinking as you were talking and thinking about how you were saying that it was a struggle, and you know, I have a bad day and I'm like, nothing good happened today. Everything's terrible. And I'm just thinking about what you've gone through and the fact that you can go and look for 3 positive things. I have no excuse. None of us have any excuse, right? At this point,
right.
We all take that and work with that. But how can people move your initiative forward and the Darkhorse Angels? Are you taking donations? Are you looking for volunteers? Do you have anything in progress right now that people can help with, or should we give you a couple of months and come back to you?
No, absolutely. Yeah. So the big thing that we're trying to do now is help finish out the Darkhorse Lodge. So you can find them at darkhorselodge.org. And so that would be huge, getting them over the finish line. Darkhorse Angels Foundation is the foundation I started. And so, yes, I am also accepting, you know, it's a 501c3 company. And so I am accepting donations for that as well, for the vision moving forward with that. I'm looking to do the park actually first. I need to start meeting with the city. Arvada is where he lived when he got deployed. That's where I'd like to look for a location for that. And so that's the next big one there. People can get behind that as well. And just contact me, reach out, and there's all kinds of things we can volunteer for in the meantime.
So, okay, so Darkhorse Angels, is that .org as well? I want to put it here in the comments for everybody.
Darkhorselodge.org is the one that's currently under work. I don't have a website right now for Darkhorse Angels Foundation. I haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, no problem. Hey, if anybody out there wants to help well, you're a software guy. You don't need any help with your website. You probably could build a better website.
Let me ask a question about the lodge. So I heard you say that it's like 5 rooms with like 5 beds each or something like that, right? To recognize these 25 young men that died. But what's the like, what is the lodge? I mean, I get that it's a lodge, but what's it do? Is it providing safe space, or, you know, what's the idea behind the lodge? Like, what are they doing with it?
Yeah, so the idea is for guys coming back and reintegrating with society, and they've been through a lot, they've seen a lot, and so they can hang out with other guys that have gone through the same sort of thing. They can hunt, they can fish, they can hike, they can just hang out, and it's a safe space for them. That's
so it's geared towards helping them people when they come back have sort of a retreat where they can get away from whatever they're dealing with and kind of have some camaraderie with other people that are going through similar things.
Yep, absolutely. And I want to do the Western version of that same thing in the mountains outside Steamboat. So that's the vision.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great.
Mike, you didn't just move on with, with your professional life and your charitable life. You also moved on with your family life, and you now have 2 young children. Tell us about them.
Yeah, absolutely. So after I was divorced, and so both kids, I was essentially an empty nester. Brandon goes off to boot camp. Ashley goes off to college. And so I'm divorced. So I relived my 20s. That was a lot of fun. And then so I met my current wife in Sturgis at the bike rally. If that's any indication. And so yeah, we ended up hitting it off. We got married. She's quite a bit younger and hadn't had kids. And she asked if I'd be willing to do that again, because that was really a part of what she wanted to have in her life. And you know what? By that time, especially being an empty nester again, I'm like, yeah, I would. That was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. And that was before I lost Brandon as well. And so yeah, we have 2 other kids. I've got a 5-year-old boy again, which is pretty surreal. His name is Kaiden. So Kai means ocean in Hawaiian, fire in Polynesian. So it's the strength behind that. And Hawaii was Brandon's favorite vacation ever. We did a cruise around the Hawaiian Islands. And so there was a tie there. After he was killed, we did a kind of a tribute trip to him there. And so now we go every other year as well. But Kai, we decided to combine that strength behind Kai with the DON from Brandon. So that's where Kai comes from. And then I've got a 2-year-old daughter named Havana. And while there's no significance behind the Havana name as it relates to Brandon, she is a Spitfire. She is definitely going to give me a run for the money this go around for sure. It's amazing.
I think it's funny how you said it's surreal to have a 5-year-old boy now. Are you seeing like a lot of the same mannerisms or behaviors?
Yeah, it's deja vu. It is absolutely deja vu. And I see some of the things, and I see some of the things in her as well, as far as the spunkiness and just the energy, and but also the caring. He's very caring with his sister, and so even that trait is there, and just some of the things he does and some of the mannerisms that he does. It's truly surreal.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really great. So, so if someone is dealing with whatever they're dealing with, your first step for them is just to try to find the positive. Do you have any other things that you think are useful that, maybe helped you, or that might help somebody that's dealing with loss or whatever they might be dealing with?
Absolutely. So one of the things, and I draw a lot on, I was not in the military myself, but I still keep in touch with a lot of Brandon's buddies. I've been to some weddings with his buddies and still keep in touch with them on Facebook. I've gotten a lot of texts today from them as well. And but a lot of the things that the Marines teach these guys, they help get them through boot camp. They help get them through times when mentally and physically they are just getting run through the ringer. And so they have some sayings that they have. There's the improvise, adapt, overcome phrase that the Marines have, and so that find a way. Yeah, failure is absolutely not an option. Find a way. And so figure out how to get it done is a big part. The inspiration I have, if thinking about what those guys have been through and what they do, they get me through everything from, if I drop something on my foot to getting through a workout. I mean, it's amazing how many more reps you can do, how many more sets you can do when you start thinking about what those guys have done. And you realize this is nothing. This is absolutely nothing. I can totally do this. And so that piece of it, there's also a James Finney, one of his buddies, said in a post, and he said, control what you can, smile at what you can't. There's also control of what you can, embrace what you can't, and very similar. And truly that phrase has helped me a lot, because everything from things that are mundane daily traffic, as an example, I hate traffic. So that's my bad.
I'm right there with you, by the way. I hate it.
It's, some things you can't control, and so embrace it. Truly embrace it. You can't change it. So again, find the good things out of it, embrace it, find a way to make it be okay, and something that doesn't pull you down. Because if you truly focus on the negative things of everything that's happening around you, you would never get out of bed. You'd be in the fetal position and you'd be stuck for the rest of your life. And by focusing on, control the things you can, try to do the right things for you, your family, and for the things that you can't control, man, just embrace it. James Finney just did a post the other day. I thought it was great. He talked about, because he does in drill instruction now and training for the Marines. And he talked about, he's in North Carolina, and the Marines were out and they were all wet, and they were all complaining about being wet. They were in the rain. And one of the Marines that was with him, he went and jumped in a ditch first as they were starting to go out. And James was like, what are you doing? He says, if you're already wet, rain doesn't matter. I love that attitude. And truly having that attitude and finding the positive in everything, and recognizing you can't control everything. So embrace it. The Marines have another phrase, embrace the suck. And not everything is good. So embrace the suck. It'll get you through it.
Yeah, well, you're kind of preaching my words here. These are things that I mean, they're phrased different, but I say this stuff to people all the time, and I think it's 100% right.
He said it to me yesterday.
What I always tell people is that good and bad stuff happens to everyone, and the trick is to think about the good stuff and minimize the bad stuff. You're not doing exactly that because you're embracing it, but it's the same thing. Like, it loses its power if you recognize that you don't have control over everything. Because then you can say, okay, now how do I respond to whatever it is I'm going through? Not, oh, this is terrible, like it's ruining everything. It's just, if you embrace it like you're talking about, then you can wrap your hands around it and you can say, okay, I'm done. Like that no longer has power over me. And that's amazing if you can do it. It's sometimes easier to say than do, though, right? I mean, I'm sure there's still days where it's real hard. It's just really hard, right?
It is.
I mean, honestly, I'm actually in awe that you're able to come on a show like this at all and talk about this stuff, because I don't think I could do it. I think I'd be overwhelmed. Jillian was overwhelmed earlier, and it's not even her family,
Well, I was overwhelmed. That was the first time I read that and cried. Well, I read your Facebook passage. The only reason why I was able to read it this time without totally losing my mind was because I've already read it like 5 times and cried those 5 times. Right. So I admire you so much, Mike, for being with us today. And thank you so much. And thank you to all of those who served or are serving, and especially those who've fallen in the line of duty, especially Brandon Pearson and his brothers in arms. And thank you so much, Mike. If there's anything you can do for Darkhorse Angels Foundation, please keep in touch and let us know. Jeff, do you have any parting words?
No, I think that's it. But I would say this, Mike, if people want to get a hold of you now, since you don't have a website, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
So the easiest way, they can reach out to me on Facebook. By the way, I'll admit I'm horrible on Messenger. I will get to them, especially after having come on this. I will be better about that. But my social media presence is really only, it started, to be honest, I got on Facebook when for communicating and coordinating the funeral for Brandon. That's actually how I got on Facebook. And so it's really a forum for family, but truly, if for the foundation, it is family as well. So that's a good starting place, and then we can kind of go from there.
Well, listen, I wish you the best of luck on starting your West Coast version of or Western version of the lodge and the park. I mean, I think those are great things, and they leave a long-term legacy. That's the thing about doing stuff like that. And the fact that you want to give back and everything you're doing, it's just really honorable. And listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show. But I can't, there's no way to even the score, right? Like, this going through the kind of stuff that you've had to go through, it's something that, like you said, you just have to embrace it. You can't change it.
Right. Exactly.
Well, we really appreciate it. Jillian, do you have anything else?
So listen, yeah, I just want to say, Mike, I know we're going to have people who are going to want to volunteer and help you. So please stick. We have a couple of service members in the Last Life Ever group on Facebook who are very interested in you being on today. And also we have a lot of people who support troops in a variety of different ways. So please stay close to us, because when you're ready for our tribe to help you, they'll be there for you. Last Lifers really do rise to the occasion. So
yeah, and also when you when you have a defined need, like if you're like, I've got this land and I need to help clear it or whatever it is, you might be surprised. We might be able to bring people to help with that too. So we would love to do that for you. And thank you again for coming on. We've really enjoyed having you. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off here?
I don't think so. Thank you for having me. And again, I believe in I don't know too much about Last Life Ever, and I haven't had too much exposure to that, but truly it's not what the bad things that happen to you in life, it's what you do with them. So this is just an example. There are many, many other people that have done amazing things. So just get back up and keep swinging.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you so much. I'm Jillian Sidoti. That's Jeffrey Holst. This is Last Life Ever, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.